What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another Mock Draft Monday. So thank you all for joining. First off, I'm doing a 12-team PPR from the 12th spot, so should be fun. Now, this is on Fantasy Football Calculator, so these are a little bit more competitive than like your ESPN leagues or anything like that. And this was actually requested by Chris Myers, so thanks for requesting that. If you guys do have some requests on mock drafts that you guys want done, leave them in the comment section down below. Obviously, we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but we are going to do our best to get to whichever ones are being requested the most. Now, obviously, we mostly do PPR drafts because the majority of people play in PPR leagues. So even though you guys are in standard, that's fine. You guys have these niche rules, that's fine. Just keep in mind we have to do what the majority of people have, which is PPR mock drafts. So the giveaway that we have, we're giving away a signed 8x10 T.Y. Hilton photograph, and the winner to that is Eric at Hustle and Meditate. So if your name's Eric and your Twitter handle is Hustle and Meditate, congratulations, you won. So I sent you a follow, and I will try to follow back up with you as soon as this video goes live. I don't want to spoil it until you potentially hear it, but keep an eye out for that. Just give me your information and I will send it right over to you. So that's it for that. My strategy heading into this is going to be going running back early, and it's basically because if you're on the 3-4 turn, right, you have the 12th pick in the first round, so that means you get the 12th pick, you get the 13th pick. I've done wide receiver, and the running backs that you come out with are not very strong, right? So who you're getting is at best in Alex Collins, at best to Darius Guice. Honestly, Darius Guice sometimes doesn't even make it. You know, maybe LaShawn McCoy, but LaShawn McCoy doesn't make it most times. So you're basically stuck with like Alex Collins or Kenyon Drake. Well, Alex Collins I think is a riser, which I'll touch on later on. I just think it's very important to stack some of these guys that are falling, these Leonard Fournettes, the Melvin Gordons, the Dalvin Cooks. Any combination of those four is great. Now, obviously, I would draw the line. I'm not taking Devontae Freeman with the 13th overall pick. I'll much rather take a Michael Thomas, but in no way am I trying to go receiver. I know the RB0 strategy is a real thing, but I'm not trying to do it. And let's see what we got here. So nothing out of the ordinary. I think Antonio Brown going first overall, as much as that is out of the meta, you would say, for fantasy drafts, I don't want to say that's a bad pick. You get safety in that pick, and what's the difference here? So I got Dalvin Cook and Kareem Hunt. Absolutely love it. Let me just take Kareem Hunt first so that some of you haters in the comment section don't bash me for taking Dalvin Cook in the first round, even though it makes absolutely no difference because 12th pick and 13th pick, they're back to back. I'm basically picking them with the same pick. 2-for-1 special. Now, let me just show you based on the ADP right now who we have going in the back of the third. So this is where I'd get to pick, right? So you got Derrick Henry. He's the best option. So if you go wide receiver, and you get Derrick Henry, that's fine. That's actually a pretty good start. You know, it's lacking. You know, it's definitely not risk averse. You're gonna take definitely a high increased risk rate with that pick, but at least you have a guy who has a shot at being top 5, and realistically it's PPR, so you can find a guy that can catch some passes to have some value to slot in there if you have a really strong wide receiver core. But what I've been seeing a lot is some of these 3 receivers have fallen. At worst, you're going to get an Amari Cooper. Josh Gordon, unfortunately, I cannot recommend drafting right now. News going on with Josh Gordon is that he's not suspended, but there's some weird thing going on where he may not be with the team for an extended period of time. And with Josh Gordon, you can't trust anything. Who's surprised if Josh Gordon just all of a sudden just gets suspended indefinitely again? It's not going to surprise anyone. And if you're talking 3rd, 4th round pick, that's too risky of an investment. You know, when he was in the later rounds, like, fine, you know, his upside's there. He has first round potential, like, for a payout. You know, he could be up there with the DeAndre Hopkins, the Odell Beckhams, like in points per game, if, you know, he were playing. But I'm not going to take a shot on a guy that very likely could be suspended. Now, if news changes, he reports, and everything's fine, I'm going to be singing a different tune, but I'm going to draft right now as if this were my actual draft, and right now I can't recommend taking Josh Gordon for those reasons. Now, let's get into the stat of the day. I think it's really interesting to talk about. Friday was top 5 overlooked players, and the question was which running back with at least 25% of the team's total carries was the least elusive back and forced the least amount of missed tackles. The answer was Doug Martin, and the winner was Vitriol. So Vitriol, congratulations, you won. But the answer is Doug Martin. This brings up an interesting point because actually 1 out of 4 people were saying Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller is known for being not very elusive. He's known for having low yards per carry, right? But it just kind of instills why he was on that top 5 overlooked players list. Because 1 out of 4 people, and you guys that are watching these videos, you guys are the ones who actually do the most amount of research. You spend the most amount of time. You guys are the ones who win the most amount of your leagues because you're here while everybody else is listening to, a 30-second blurb on Sports Center while they're in between watching other sports. Now, you guys are actually diving into fantasy football, and for the majority of people to still say Lamar Miller is just interesting because everyone at one point since he's been on the Texans has owned Lamar Miller. They've been disappointed. He's always disappointed based on his draft capital. But was he the least elusive back in 2017? No. Did he force the fewest amount of missed tackles? No. And he comes into a situation where he's like RB 25 or 26 in PPR leagues, and this guy catches passes. He's not a slouch in the pass catching game. And for him to be falling that much just because of the perception of being terrible, and don't get me wrong, he doesn't have top 5 upside, but his only competition right now is between Alfred Blue, who's basically like a B-rated version of him, a scuffed version of Lamar Miller, or you have Deontay Foreman, who ruptured his Achilles and has a projected 11-month recovery time, which would slot him out to return in October. And if he returns, no guarantee that he is actually productive. So you're getting a guy who played better with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's back. He's going to get the carries. He's going to get the targets. He's going to get the receptions. He's on an offense that should be improved that has DeAndre Hopkins that's going to be making sure that they can't stack the box. I just don't understand why everyone's so off of him. Clearly he's not the most productive back, but you guys should be giving him a second look. And if you are afraid, just go ahead and sell high on him after a couple weeks. It's not that hard. So now you have Doug Martin, right? Here's the answer. So with Doug Martin, that's interesting as well because another player on that list was Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch was exceedingly strong in areas like elusiveness rating, forced missed tackles, and he was also good in pass blocking efficiency. His yards per carry was good. He was catching balls. He was all around just, a strong running back. All around, no weaknesses in any singular area. Now, the answer to this was Doug Martin, who was not elusive, was not forcing missed tackles. And while Martin's not a high draft pick, he is the only logical reason why Marshawn Lynch is so low. Remember, Marshawn Lynch was a 3rd round pick last season. Now he's coming in as like RB 33. So clearly people don't have faith that he can even produce the same amount of production that he did last season, because last season he finished as a back-end RB2. So they're projecting a decline. And yes, he's old, but his only competition for touches, his only competition for targets is Doug Martin, who we have consistently seen year over year fail us and be at the bottom of the league in areas like elusiveness and missed tackles and such like that. So I just think it was really interesting, the public's perception on Lamar Miller as it was opposed to Doug Martin, and how it really tied into that top 5 list. So I just think that stat of the day was just in perfect timing for the actual video itself, top 5 most overlooked players. But that's a big enough tangent. Let's take a look at who we have on the board. And this is why I like to go running back. I'm going to show you the running backs available. Already, the running backs we have to choose from: Darius Geis, Alex Collins, Jay Ajayi, Kenyon Drake. There's no guarantee. There's still more than 4 picks until mine. There's a chance that all 4 of those guys are gone. I'm not saying that it's a logical expectation, but it's realistic. Right now there's 5 receivers, so if the next 5 players are receivers, 1, 2, 3, 4, I still have a choice between Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper. But I'll be happy with any of these 4, and I'm guaranteed to get one of them. Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Larry Fitzgerald. Amari Cooper should have made, part of the overlooked list, but some of his inconsistencies in the receiving game did make him a notch down. Plus, we didn't want to add Marshawn Lynch and Amari Cooper because, realistically, we don't expect this Oakland Raiders team to just take a huge step forward. But Martavis Bryant could be suspended. Jordy Nelson's on his last leg. If Martavis Bryant gets suspended, Amari Cooper just has top 5 upside, undoubtedly. So don't be super afraid to draft him. I'm going to take him right here. I get 2 picks, so let's see who I can get. I'm going to get Alex Collins, and I'll tell you why, in Amari Cooper. Because I can't take Josh Gordon. I'm not going to take a quarterback. Realistically, who it's Alex Collins or Jay Ajayi, and it's Amari Cooper or Josh Gordon. I could take Demaryius Thomas. I'm not taking Demaryius Thomas in the 3rd round. I'm going to shoot for upside. So Amari Cooper. Here, I'll take Alex Collins in the 3rd round. So, it's semantics, whatever. So, semantics, whatever. So, basically, I got Amari Cooper and Alex Collins. And the reason why I just talked about Amari Cooper and why I think he is the pick there. I will tell you honestly that I would take Larry Fitzgerald over him. I would take Tyreek Hill over him. I would take Stephon Diggs over him. Those players didn't fall, and that's realistically going to happen in your drafts. Sometimes you would hope that one of these 4 players falls, and in some drafts they actually will. You will get the player that you have ranked higher fall to you. But, you can't always expect it. You always have to have a backup plan for a backup plan for a backup plan until your pick comes. So if there's 4 picks until your pick, make sure you have 4 guys lined up. Amari Cooper was unfortunately ranked 4th on the list of those guys, and I ended up drafting him. But I told you why Josh Gordon is just off my board right now. That could only last a week or 2, but that's just, a realistic situation that I'm trying to avoid. Alex Collins, that one came as a surprise to you guys, and there's one reason and one reason only why Alex Collins is now a guy I am taking in drafts. And it's not because I'm trying to inflate the RB market and trying to make sure that 30 out of the first 40 picks are running backs. No, the answer is because Kenneth Dixon, who, as you know, is one of our favorite late round targets, has a hamstring issue. Hamstring issues are one of the absolute worst issues you can have, especially for a running back, because they linger. If you're rushed back too much, if you're forced to do too much, a hamstring issue can derail your entire season. And better running backs than Kenneth Dixon have dealt with hamstring injuries and not been able to recover. So I'm not saying not being able to recover for their whole season, but not being able to recover and play immediately. So he's going to have to take some time off. I'm not sure how severe it is. The news just broke, but it's going to rise Alex Collins, because remember, they did not bring in a running back from free agency. At least nobody noteworthy. Maybe they picked somebody up since the news of Kenneth Dixon. I know I would, because they're pretty thin in that area. But they also didn't draft anybody in what was an extremely strong running back draft class. So those 2 signs, they have faith in Alex Collins. He played well while he was there. So he is rising on the list. Obviously, I don't think it's like incredible value, but remember, when you're on the turn, right? And this goes for all of you guys. If you're pick 1 or if you're pick 12, if you're on the turn, you're going to be reaching on guys, and that's just a fact. If you want to assume that you're not going to have to reach on anybody, you haven't done enough mock drafts from this position. Sometimes players fall to you, but most oftentimes you have to reach. I'm not saying Alex Collins is a super reach at pick 36, but you're going to have to be flexible with these picks. Now, I do have 3 running backs and 1 receiver. Clearly, Amari Cooper has some risk to him. I do need to get another receiver. I'm liking Corey Davis. I'm liking Sammy Watkins. I will have my mind open to running backs as well. Like I said, I'm not locking myself in to any one position. But look at this run on receivers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 picks in a row, all receivers. I think Alshon Jeffrey at pick 5th round, 5th of the 5th round, That's the best pick in the draft so far. Best pick of the draft. Because Alshon Jeffrey, one of the stat of the days we did a few weeks back, his or a few days back, I'm sorry. 8 receivers now in a row. Alshon Jeffrey had like hardly any targets be catchable, like 50%. And he still produced at a high level. Not only that, he was a free agent receiver that just joined a team, which always takes time to develop. We saw Marvin Jones go from year 1 to year 2, take a big jump. That jump historically from year 1 and year 2 has been prevalent. So it's been something we've consistently seen. And I think Alshon Jeffrey could be in for a big year. And to get him in the 5th round behind a player like Cooks and Tate, where he provides so much more upside, and his week-to-week consistency may not be as high because his volume may not be as high, at least as it's Golden Tate's, but I think he's just far and away an incredible 5th round pick. Let's see who I have here. I'm going to take Chris Hogan. Let's see, who else can I take? Back to the 5th. I can take Chris Hogan, and I like Ronald Jones here in the 6th. I might actually take Watkins. I'm first going to take Chris Hogan. I could take Watkins, so I'm thinking either Watkins or Ronald Jones. I think the value on Ronald Jones is almost too good to pass up, so I'm going to take Ronald Jones. We're not high on Ronald Jones at all, and obviously he's not a strong pass catcher. We don't have high expectations for this team as much as we did previously. Their schedule has come out, and we've looked at all the data, and the data doesn't support a super positive schedule for the team. Ronald Jones is still a value in the 6th round, so I'm going to take him. And the reason I got Chris Hogan, right, I know he could potentially bust, but the reason we're talking about busting for Chris Hogan is because after week 4, he is going to have Julian Edelman come back, and Edelman is going to be a target monster. So what Chris Hogan gives me for flexibility, because remember, I have 4 of my first 6 picks are running backs, right? The reason 4 of my first 6 picks are running backs is because there is an insane amount of value and safety in the later rounds at wide receiver. So by taking someone like Chris Hogan, who, if you're drafting Chris Hogan, you want to start him in the first 4 weeks. What do I have Chris Hogan as? My wide receiver 2. I'm going to start him for the first 4 weeks. In the meantime, I can draft in volume these late round wide receivers. I can draft Devin Funchess if he falls to me. I can draft Randall Cobbs. I can draft Tyler Lockett's, Josh Doxson. Some of these guys that we're just looking for in every time we're drafting in the later rounds. And I can draft them and not be forced to start them. I have enough running backs on the team to put in the flex. I only have to start 2 receivers. And as it stands right now, Amari Cooper and Chris Hogan would be slotted in. That's going to give me, Chris Hogan's single-handedly going to be giving me the flexibility to see how my receivers develop and start whichever one I feel most confident in after a few weeks. And, Chris Hogan does have that ability to sell high. After the first 4 weeks, I'm tempering my expectations on him. I'm not expecting huge things from him. I just don't think he's going to have consistent enough volume to be a high-level producer, just simply due to Edelman alone. But for this roster construction that I'm making, for this team that I'm building, I think he fits right in. Remember, you always want to be flexible. And while Chris Hogan, I have this plan in my head and picture of how his season's going to start off. I think he's going to start off really hot, but then severely cool down once Edelman comes back. So to know these projected outcomes for every player in the league is going to be extremely important for when you're constructing your roster, because each one of these players I drafted have risk. Each one of these players has upside. So to fit them in with the reasons like I'm listing below is going to be an extremely useful tool that you guys can be using for your drafts. Now, I think Marlon Mack in the 7th round is an insane value. I will love if, Kyle Rudolph falls to me. I wouldn't hold my breath, but realistically, that would be an awesome pick. I also hope Andrew Luck is there in the 9th round. That would be an awesome pick. Let's see who I have here. I need to get some wide receivers. So I'm going to get Randall Cobb and Devin Funchess here. Randall Cobb, Devin Funchess. I would prefer, honestly, I would love to get Kirk Cousins, who we have in a second tier. Like, let's see who Kirk Cousins is available. Carson Wentz is good too. Oh, by the way, guys, Carson Wentz is throwing in practice. He is playing on 11 on 11. He's been taking hits. Dude looks like he's ready. I mean, I don't know what more we need to see. I think he's going to play week 1. Obviously, he could have some setbacks, but I think he's good to go. But regardless, we have Kirk Cousins ranked higher than him on our rankings. So it would be nice, realistically, to get in round 7 Kirk Cousins, and round 8 Kyle Rudolph. Both guys who I think we have rated at about QB4 or maybe QB5. QB5 for Cousins and TE4 for Rudolph. So much higher than consensus. And we're getting those players in the later rounds. But unfortunately, I need to just get depth at my wide receiver and running back position. If I didn't get a wide receiver after Chris Hogan until the 9th and 10th round, I'd be just screwed. Yeah, I'd have good starters, but one injury to either Chris Hogan or Amari Cooper, and I'd be forced. Let's see, who's in the 9th and 10th round AEP? Because yeah, I'd be forced to start Allen Hurns. Forced to start Allen Hurns. Allen Hurns is a guy who I'd draft if I got lucky. DJ Moore, he's a guy I would draft. Can't start Allen Hurns or DJ Moore in week 1, week 2. It just doesn't make sense. Marquise Goodwin on a really good day, if I got lucky, I'd be happy to start him. And he's boomer bust anyway. So I couldn't do that to myself. Replacement level production from quarterbacks is going to be easy to come up with. Like, I mean, I could pray and maybe get Andrew Luck coming back to me. Or, I mean, geez, Kirk Cousins is actually following. There's a small chance I might get him. Wouldn't hold my breath, though. Jordan Reed, he's a player I'd gamble on too. But if I miss out on those guys, I'm totally going to just wait. By the way, I want to mention a couple players. Let's talk about Jack Doyle and David Njoku. So, start off with David Njoku. I said I didn't want to draft Josh Gordon because of the ambiguity with his situation, and we don't know what's going on with him. Do you know who would get the most bump if Josh Gordon went down? And I know instantly you think Jarvis Landry, but I think the concerns with Jarvis Landry go deeper than just, I mean, volume obviously is a factor, but also the skill set for Tyrod Taylor, who is by far and away ahead of either Baker Mayfield or, you know, the old backup for Arizona, Drew Stanton. So who would get the most benefit is David Njoku in the red zone. He could be used between the 20s. He performed extremely well. I think he had one of the highest catch rates on catchable deep targets last season. He's also, you know, a big bodied guy who can be used in the red zone. You only have Jarvis Landry and Corey Coleman. Realistically, you have like Jeff Janis and some other guys, Antonio Callaway, who may make an appearance now that I think of it. But realistically, David Njoku stands the most to gain from anything happening to Josh Gordon. So keep an eye out for him. He's definitely rising. Jack Doyle, he's also a guy who I would be interested in because I think it's still a little too early, but he's a guy I'm interested in because he's like the Matthew Stafford of the receiver. He's like the Matthew Stafford of the tight end position. He's like the Phillip Rivers. He's not going to win you weeks, but he's not going to lose you weeks either. And sometimes at tight end, that's really all you need. You don't need a guy to just completely blow up. It's nice to have, but you don't need him. Let's see. I'm not going to take him, though, because I do value him similarly to some of these other guys. Like I said, they're in the same tier. I'm going to get like Allen Hurns here. Let's see who I got at running back. So it's starting to get really thin at running back. I'm going to get a running back as well. I'm going to first have to get Allen Hurns before I auto draft. So now I'm going to go to running back. This is where I'm going to start to take shots. I think my wide receivers are actually good. So I think I'm done at wide receiver. I'm going to take Chris Carson. All the news you've heard, he's looking really good. Obviously, I have these 4 RBs. I'm not looking to start him. So he's a guy I can kind of wait on. Quarterback position, I'm not really worried about. I'd be completely fine with taking like a Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota hasn't been looking extremely great in practice, but I don't mind taking a shot on him at all. Let's see, who else? This guy got Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. Interesting technique. Now, Andrew Luck, the guy who drafted Andrew Luck, I would be less surprised if he drafted a backup quarterback. But for someone to take Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford, kind of betting against yourself. Unless you plan on drafting Matthew Stafford, expecting him to kind of explode and either selling on Tom Brady or selling on Matthew Stafford's high, like a sell high candidate. But I don't really understand the pick. Let's see how many picks I have left. I still can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can get 2 more running backs before I have to get my kicker and defense. So let's see some guys who I'm going to take. I'm not going to take Kenneth Dixon right now, only because I took Alex Collins, and when I'm drafting this team right here, I'm going with the narrative that Alex Collins is going to be the guy, right? I'm buying in on that idea. I don't want to draft both and buy into both narratives, like, oh, it could happen this way or it could happen this way. So I just want to make sure that in the end I come out with at least one of the guys. So no, I'd rather just pick one side, stick to it. Either I could pick the side that Alex Collins is going to be fine. He comes back from the hamstring injury and everything's all good. He ends up potentially taking over Alex Collins' role. Or B, I take Alex Collins and I buy into the fact that Kenneth Dixon is even less of a threat to take his targets or touches, and that nobody else on the roster is going to be strong. So you have to really pick one side or the other, and it kind of ties into why we don't draft handcuffs, or I'm not going to say we don't draft handcuff players because Chris Carson's technically a handcuff, right? He's playing behind Rashad Penny. But don't draft Chris Carson if you own Rashad Penny. Both of them are fine to own on their own, but don't draft both players because there's no realistic outcome where both Chris Carson and Rashad Penny are top 20 RBs. I mean, well, I guess technically that happened with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, but I mean, realistically, that line is complete garbage, and I just think that what they did last season isn't even repeatable for themselves, so I think that could happen for Penny and Carson's unrealistic, but that's neither here nor there. But that basically tells you why I wouldn't take Kenneth Dixon with, one of these late round picks, even though he is definitely one of the better late round flyers out there. So for those of you who haven't been keeping an eye on the news, Twitter is an excellent place to keep up with all the news and notes. Apparently Matt Breida is looking like a stud. How valuable is that? Not much. You can't value it too much, but what you can take a look at is some of these beat writers, some of the videos that they're posting. It's pretty interesting to see how well some of these young players and young quarterbacks are performing. Patrick Mahomes has been a guy who has really shown a connection with Sammy Watkins. I've seen several videos of him and Sammy Watkins just completely destroying it. Now, you have to take all that with a grain of salt because for every one highlight play that they have, you have to assume that there was 3, 4, 5, who knows, maybe even 12 poor throws that they had. So you can't always take a video as gospel, and realistically, as much as we always like to put on the rose-colored lenses, you always have to take everything with a grain of salt. My pick's coming up. Let's see who I'd take here. I think Nyheim Hines is a great pick. He's probably unlikely to fall. I do need a quarterback. I'm not touching Jared Goff. I will take Marcus Mariota. I won't be thrilled about it. He has a tough schedule. But I have no problem. Honestly, I really could care less who I draft because I'm only going to start them for week 1. Someone like Eli Manning, he plays the Jags week 1. But after that, I'm completely fine taking him or starting him. He's got Saquon Barkley, pass catching RB, Sterling Shepard, Odell Beckham, Evan Engram. I mean, the list goes on. This guy, he's going to have to try really hard to suck, and I know he's done, but I may be the highest person on Eli Manning this year, and it's not because I like Eli Manning or think he's good. I just think that how can you fail with that amount of good players around you and having a pretty good schedule? His schedule is not listed as super easy, but that's only because he faces a few defenses that are really good. Like I said, he starts off with the Jags, but realistically, if you really go game by game, he has a pretty decent schedule. So you can't always listen to everything. I'm gonna go Patrick Mahomes though. Go sheer upside. Let's see who I got at tight end. Oh, I got Doyle. I'll take Doyle. I would love to have Hines, but I mean, at some point you got to take a quarterback and a tight end. The quarterbacks went kind of early this draft. Let's go through the team. I don't think this team's like weak in any one area because, like, let's say receiver, right? I have Amari Cooper, Chris Hogan. That's lacking some top end upside. Amari Cooper realistically could be a wide receiver 1. I know he doesn't feel like it, and especially those who owned him recently would definitely say the opposite. But if Martavis Bryant's suspended, he then plays both the deep threat, and he is projected to be in the slot. So even if Martavis Bryant isn't suspended, that could realistically help him. So I think that there is some upside in Amari Cooper this year. He's one of those guys who is like a post-hype sleeper. Now, Amari Cooper is... The reports have came out from the coaching staff that they want to run this offense through Amari Cooper, which is the best news that you could possibly hear for a receiver that you're going to draft. But I also have Chris Hogan, who for the first 4 weeks I can put in as my wide receiver 2. While I see how these receivers, remember, this is the plan. The plan was to see how these receivers pan out. This is a PPR league. I have Randall Cobb, Devin Funchess, and Allen Hurns. After 2, 3, 4 weeks, I'm going to have a really safe idea on who can perform or who's not performing. So I know who I can start. And I have my running backs, Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Alex Collins. Those should be my starters. My sleeper is going to be Ronald Jones, the guy who I'm not starting, but I know he has potential. And then Chris Carson's kind of like the flyer pick. He's like the one who I just sit on the bench, and you know, the hopes would be that Rashad Penny, in this pick, I'm saying I'm not hoping Rashad Penny busts, but if I'm taking Chris Carson, the hopes is that Rashad Penny can't, you know, overcome the poor offensive line, and Chris Carson has proven in the past that he can. Right now, the reports out of camp is that Chris Carson's looking better, but I mean, that's not going to sway me in one direction or the other on why I think Chris Carson's the pick over Rashad Penny or anything like that. I think both of them have value depending on where you get them in the draft, but that's kind of the plan on how my team would pan out so far. I have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. I think he plays tough defense week 1, and maybe the Chargers. Chargers just lost Jason Verrett though, so they're pretty deep at the defensive back position. So I'm not going to worry too much if you're a Chargers fan. It may be the difference between them going to the Super Bowl or not, but I wouldn't worry too much. I do need to get another running back. I may go for a shot on Matt Breida. I'm not going to get Kenneth Dixon for the reasons I said below. Okay, I'm going to go for Matt Breida here, just based off of what they were saying at camp. I think Michael Gallup's a good pick as well. Tyrell Williams is definitely the pick though. Ooh, Christian Kirk, that's so tough. Nick would for sure go Tyrell Williams over Christian Kirk, but darn, boy do I love Christian Kirk. I'm gonna go Christian Kirk. Okay, Nick would have gone Tyrell Williams just for informational purposes. Where did Tyler Lockett go? Because he's actually one of our, and Josh Doctson. These guys are like one of our favorite picks, or at least mine for sure. I'm super high on Josh Doctson. Not like I think he's going to, like he's guaranteed to be a wide receiver 2 or anything like that. But I just think, why is he going in the 13th round? He's for sure, they've been saying it and saying it and saying it. Josh Doctson's the red zone weapon. They've consistently said it. And everyone is super low on all these players, but 13th round is really ridiculous. This guy's a first round receiver. He's coming into his 3rd year, which is the breakout year. And Tyler Lockett, he is the wide receiver 2 on a team that has no defense. So these are some of our favorite late round picks. Another guy I've been liking is Christian Kirk. Obviously, they have a lot of mouths to feed between David Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald, but other than that, he could totally be battle for second on this team in targets. I mean, David Johnson garners a lot of targets to begin with, especially considering that the quarterbacks like checkdowns. So, you know, David Johnson's going to get his. Obviously, I love David Johnson pick, but I think Christian Kirk fits in super well. So Christian Kirk's a guy I'm always looking for at the tail end of the draft. And, you know, had I not drafted him, he probably would have gone undrafted. Jordan Matthews got injured, I think. Let's see, what do we got for news? I think Jordan Matthews got injured. Yeah, I don't know. He got injured today, so keep that in mind. then let's see. I think I have to take a defense and kicker. Is it 16 rounds? I think it's 16 rounds. Let's see. Let's talk about some defenses, some sleeper defenses, right? Carolina, you're gonna be good, not great. Chicago, they are for sure a sleeper defense. I think Titans defense is a sleeper as well. Giants defense, definitely a sleeper. They're switching to a 3-4. They did lose. Who did they lose? They lost their defensive end, Jason Pierre-Paul. But I mean, Pierre-Paul has not been as good as he was before that. That unfortunate 4th of July injury. Who else we got? A lot of these defenses are really bad. Let's see here. Yeah, Giants defense. Arizona. Oh my gosh, they really are ranked that low. They lost. Who did they lose? Tyrann Mathieu. Now that obviously hurts them, but not to go all the way down here. That's just ridiculous. Now kicker, we got sleeper kickers. Kickers are kickers. Get Chargers kicker. That's actually not bad. They usually use the tight ends in the red zone. As we all know, they don't have Antonio Gates. They don't have Hunter Henry. They've yet to find out what their identity is in the red zone yet. And while I do think the person who benefits the most from that is either Melvin Gordon, it could also be either Tyrell Williams or Mike Williams. I think that Caleb Sturgis for fantasy is going to be good. Let's see, Arizona. Oh, is that it? Okay, I'm done. I don't get to pick a kicker. He said I didn't have to pick a defense either. So let's run through the team. Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Alex Collins, Ronald Jones, Chris Carson, Matt Breida. I think that's great. That's a good mix of 3 guys that are guaranteed starters, at least initially. Ronald Jones can grow into a starter throughout the season, maybe the first few weeks. I went through the receivers, so I'm not going to go through them too much more. But Chris Carson and Matt Breida, those are going to be the sleeper kind of candidates, the guys that kind of sit on the bench, just develop into potentially something, or maybe they don't end up being anything either. These are going to be the guys that I'll end up dropping. I do have to have Chris Hogan kind of mend the trenches, so to speak, while I'm figuring out what's going on with my slew of mediocre wide receiver 2s or potential wide receiver 2s with Randall Cobb, Devin Funchess, Allen Hurns, and Christian Kirk. All 4 guys, I will say, get a significant bump up in PPR leagues. Actually, Devin Funchess may not get a bump up. I think he's pretty valuable in either way because, let's face it, Funchess has been targeted in the red zone extremely heavily throughout his career, and that doesn't look to stop. Allen Hurns is better, I'd say, in PPR because this team itself isn't going to have a lot of scoring opportunities, so you can't project them to have high touchdowns. And when you're determining who's a PPR guy and who's a standard guy, it's a combination between how many targets you're going to get, your average depth of targets, and your potential for getting touchdowns. And Allen Hurns probably going to have more receptions and yardage than he is touchdowns, so let's just face it. But then Jack Doyle and Pat Mahomes. I have no problem dropping Pat Mahomes after a week. Jack Doyle, I mean, same thing. I'd probably stick with Jack Doyle because I think that he's going to be fine. I don't think he's going to be immediately like top 8 guy, but I don't think that you're going to find easy replacement or easy production or guaranteed production, let me put it that way, on the waiver wire after week 1. So I wouldn't mind rolling him out week over week, at least initially, as I kind of figure out the tight end situation across the league. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, I think there's plenty of quarterbacks left. Let's see, between Case Keenum, Jameis Winston, Mitchell Trubisky, I love. I would have drafted him like with my last pick if I didn't have a quarterback. Between Tyrod, Case Keenum, Trubisky, Winston after week 3. Like I said, there's Eli Manning. There's just plenty of value to be had. But that's the team. Love it or hate it, that's where it is today. And remember, don't take it too seriously. This is a mock draft, but that kind of gives you my idea of how I kind of think of things as we're going through this 12-team PPR draft from the 12 spot. So if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.